Welcome to the Agile Wire. Brought to you by Wisconsin Agility. We want you to get agile and stay agile. Now here are your hosts, Jeff Bubolz and Chad Beier. And we're recording. All right, kick us off, Jeff.
All right, we have Stefan Wolpers joining us on the podcast today. So, Stefan, could you just give our users just a little background about yourself and what you're doing over in Germany?
Well, Jeff, Chad, first of all, thanks a lot for having me. It's a great pleasure. What am I doing? I try to understand how agile product development works, and I've been doing though for a long time, almost 2 decades. And professionally, I'm working as a professional Scrum trainer for Scrum.org, which doesn't mean I'm a dogmatist, but found that Scrum is helpful in a lot of circumstances.
And I know you're working on a book right now, the Scrum Anti-Patterns Guide. It's kind of like the Scrum Guide, but the Scrum Anti-Patterns Guide. So it's like, tell us more about that. Like, I know it's about to get published in January 24 of 2024, right? So it'll be released very soon.
Yeah, it's been quite a work, and finally we managed teamwork as always, and we're really happy and excited that the production part is almost done, and we will see. So what is it all about? It's the application of a simple learning principle to the realm of agile product development. It's learning by inversion, So instead of trying to figure out what is best for the cause, you just figure out, okay, maybe we will be successful by just avoiding the usual stupidities, So it's if you want some sort of, I borrowed from Charlie Munger's investment idea, and applied it here. And I've been working on this for years. It started, let me guess, 2017 or something like that. I was working for a large utility and as a Scrum Master. And I was commuting from Berlin to West Germany every week, back and forth. And on the train rides, I just took some notes on what I observed. And it happened to be a lot of stuff that you actually don't want to happen in your environment when you're really interested in practicing Scrum well, right? And I started writing some blog posts, and the blog post got larger. Then I created a little ebook, and 2 years ago I thought maybe this is actually something that deserves a bit more attention. And fortunately, Scrum.org and Pearson have a collaboration. It's called the Professional Scrum Series. And I suggested the project, and I was accepted. I was totally enthusiastic about it. I wrote a first draft. Spoiler alert, the publishing industry is not agile at all. Even the Professional Scrum Series, it's big batch releases all up front and stuff. And so I created my first draft and sent it over. And, it was like being back in high school, your essay comes back to you, and you just okay, how much red is there? And so I basically started rewriting large parts of the book earlier this year. And then we did it chapter by chapter, and that was significantly easier than doing this big batch releases. I'm not built for that.
It's funny, like when Jeff and I get a question like, how did you get into advising people on all things agile, and Scrum being one of those, 80 to 90% of all things agile is Scrum. And my quick response usually is, well, we figured out all the wrong ways to do things, and that allows us to then be able to narrow in on, a very effective way to do things. And it's said half jokingly, but there's some truth to it, I think, in that it's the experiences that you have that help you be able to give others advice, because you have maybe done something the wrong way and learn from it, so you can help people avoid that. That's what I hear in the title of this book, right? Is that here's all the things to watch out for as you're trying to use Scrum and get all the benefits from it. And I know it's probably hard to summarize it, but if you had to boil it down, like what are some of the really, really common anti-patterns that you've captured in the book? Or maybe instead of just some specific anti-patterns, is there a theme that you have sort of seen emerge after putting all this together?
Absolutely, yes. So first of all, I'm guilty as charged of many of the anti-patterns in the book, because I practiced them deliberately and enthusiastically. For example, for a time I found it really funny to play Bob Marley's Get Up, Stand Up at the beginning of the daily Scrum. And up to the moment when I thought to myself, shouldn't the developers be intrinsically motivated to have this event, right? Because it's their event, right? And why do you actually have to play the song, so that they're showing up? And I stopped doing so, right? And so many of the anti-patterns I described basically have this personal touch from my perspective. You did something well-meaning, and then you figured out, no, it's not going to work this way because you're stepping on the toes of some important principles here, like self-management. So it's I know. Many Scrum Masters, for example, like to be helpful and support their team and accomplishing their goals, etc. pp. But sometimes it's getting a bit too intense, this urge to help, So they actually maybe they probably even recognize what they're doing, but they're basically starting to patronize the team. They just want to be helpful, but by being helpful, they how shall I put it? They start impeding self-management. Now it takes a lot of patience and it's not easy. You watch how this thing goes for the third or fourth time astray, and it is so simple, and you do not understand why they're not getting it. But maybe you just need to have the patience for a fifth run until they make progress. So refrain from solving. So that for example is one of the important patterns that you see. Interfering with self-management. Sometimes for nefarious reasons, on other occasions for well-meaning reasons. Idealists are very, very dangerous people. So that is one of the patterns. Another pattern always is that you have this fair weather sailing with Agile, right? So when everything is smooth, people said, yeah, Agile is great. The moment the waters get a bit choppy, they said, yeah, come on, we have a serious problem here now. First of all, let's abandon the Scrum kindergarten here and get back to real work, right? I need 3 volunteers. Thomas, Malcolm, and you in the corner. Come on. This, of course, is another issue here, right? So a lot of the problems that you have are, I think, not just at the team level, but also at the organizational level, of course. I mean, Scrum is no rocket science, Motivated people typically do not take longer than 2 or 3 sprints to understand the basic mechanics. But then the fun part starts. So for example, why aren't we allowed to talk to our customers? Whenever we reach out to sales and ask, can you introduce us to a customer? Because we want to know how they're using the software and what problems they have. Can we observe them, how they use the stuff? And then they always come back to us and say, no, because they don't trust us, for example, because they believe that all the developers are, just nerdy and will talk about secret issues, and then they lose their bonus, whatever. Another classic topic. So a lot of issues that we have when we try to really use Scrum in practice and live up to its potential and reap the benefits. So, I mean, it's not just for the fun of doing it, but it's also a sound business decision. We run into these problems.
Yeah, it's easy to understand the concepts. It's difficult to put it into practice a lot of times, especially when the pressure is there, right? And I think that's probably where I don't know. So Chad and I both coach basketball here in the United States, and we were just commenting last week about how our kids they get when the press comes on them. So like when they do like a full court press with all the fundamentals, all the things we coach, they just get in a hurry and they forget it. They do the things that we've talked about. They know not to do. They understand it. They understand the theory. They know they shouldn't be throwing a long pass that's way high in the air, but they do it anyway, right? Like it's not that all that different than a Scrum team that's put into a lot of pressure. It's like, well, if you got a lot of pressure, we're just going to do the things really fast, and we forget why we're doing them and how to do them and how to be strategic about them. And so I think these are very common things that we see play out all the time. And so maybe there's just some things to think about. Like when you feel yourself doing that, like what do we do in basketball? We take a timeout and we say, hey, let's calm down. Let's make a small plan for the next little bit of time, and let's execute that plan together. Right. And so I think that maybe that's that advice can work really well for a team as well. Like there is still a reason to slow down, make a plan, make a just-in-time plan, and focus, So what would be some of your advice for some of these teams that are, okay, you're in a high pressure situation and maybe self-management's starting to go out the window. What do you do?
Well, first of all, I like Jocko Willink's approach of discipline equals freedom. So there's a reason why we do things. And there's a reason why we spend some time on drilling ourselves. Because in a critical moment, we actually can act in a different way. We can free up intellectual capacity to actually deal with the real problem, because we do not have to recall all the steps that we actually supposed to do here, because we're then on the safe side. And this is a critical issue by all means. So taking time out is really a good idea. What I'm also really a fan of is, take a step back and take a deep breath and think about why are the things they are. There's always a reason for this. Nothing happens out of the blue. This is a system, there are structures, there are relationships, everything is set in place. And the system is just reacting to the situation or to the developing situation that you're facing. And why is that? What I found really interesting, you may have heard that people write books because we want to learn something. The same on my side. So I put much more emphasis on figuring out why the things are the way they are. So why is it that we observe these anti-patterns? And it's significantly more nuanced than you would believe at first glance. There's always a reason why things are the way they are. It's not arbitrary. It's sort of deliberate, often driven by systems. And if you do not understand how these things work, you will really have a hard time making it beyond this, okay, let's fix the symptoms threshold. And also, I believe that this is separating the good ones from the less good ones, right? At the individual as well as the team level. Figuring out, okay, well, what options do we actually have here? Do we understand the situation? And particularly for Scrum Masters, my favorite question always is how have I contributed to the situation that we're facing now? So very important. So big fan of Jerry Colonna, and I really embrace his idea. Reflect on what you did in the past, how you may have contributed to the current situation. What is it? What have you overlooked? Where should you have been more proactive? Something like that. It really helps.
Yeah. I love it. It's very easy. You made me think of a couple different things I've heard, like Jocko Willink say in different scenarios. Like he talks about the field of vision, right? When you're in an intense moment and you only see this, but if somebody can stick their head up and see the whole entire system, then they can find a path forward. It looks maybe dismal and there's no way forward when you only can see a small piece, but seeing it all. But when we think about like what we do when we're building products, like how do you see the whole system? Like, do you have any tips or tricks of like, you seems like you're in a really tough situation, but like, and I think it's a system that's causing this, but how do I see the system and how do I see the relationship between the different variables inside of the system?
I like to suggest go slow to be fast, and include everyone as early as possible in the process. So I'm a big believer in figuring out, okay, what is worth building, and this is a team sport. I mean, Agile always is a team sport, right? But we still, I think, in many organizations face a more deliberate distribution of work within teams. I wouldn't call them team internal silos because it's not really that, but you see there's a separation of work, and which always puzzles me because we're all working on one value stream. So how can it be that we separate the whole stuff? It doesn't mean that everyone has to be able to do everything, but everyone should be aware of what we're doing here. So I'm a big proponent of having my developers run user interviews. So it's really trivial. I mean, why on earth would I outsource this part of user research to maybe an external agency, an external department, other people? If my developers could do this, if you educate them right and help them to do this. Okay, not everyone will be excited about this. There are always a few people who just like to solve puzzles, and this is totally fine. But the substantial percentage will volunteer for this because they really like to know what's going on. I'm also a big fan that everyone on the team is, for example, regularly working in customer care. You have to be in the front trench to figure out, okay, how are people using your product? What is all happening with your product? What is going wrong? And how can you help them? Okay, what kind of problems are you creating? Because you take the little shortcut here because there was time pressure from the management to deliver early or in time or whatever. What is the consequences of that? So I think this really helps. Involve everyone as early as possible. Help people to understand what the problem solution space is, because in the end, we don't get paid to practice Scrum or Kanban or whatnot. We don't get paid to code. We all get paid to solve the customer's problem, and hopefully we do so with as little code as possible.
So I love it, right? We got to get close to the customers, have to have those people doing that. My experience has been like, whenever I've done that, there might be somebody I'm going to pair with when I've been on Scrum teams, and we're going to go do a user interview as the developers or as a Scrum Master and a developer or a product owner and developer. And you might be like, this is going to be a little dreadful, or people are not really looking forward to it. But then they do it, and they're like, that was probably the most valuable thing I've done in months. And they've learned so much in such a small period of time. The insights that I've gained from going and spending time with customers in their environment with your product has just been invaluable in every role. And I've played all of them on a Scrum team. And so if you're not doing that regularly, I feel like it's very easy to get demotivated too, because you don't see the value of your work. You don't see what problem you're really trying to solve. You're just hearing about things second and third hand. So if you go to the work and you see the problems, then you get to really be innovative in their technical solution. And that's the fun stuff, right? Like, you're a technologist on a dev team if you're building a digital product, and like, you get to see the problem and you get to say, I know I can help you fix that, or I think I have an idea of how we can fix that. And to me, that's just so exciting. And so that's a great nudge to anybody out there. If you're not doing it, do that, like, get feedback. And then when you're in that, I don't know, that fog, I guess, if you don't know what to build or what not to build, my advice always to team is just take that first step forward, like, just move forward and look around, get some feedback and evaluate, like, did we make the right step forward, or should we go left or right? Do we go back? Where are we going? And so it's more of that moving from an analysis mindset to a feedback mindset. And that's a really challenge for a lot of people. So I don't know. Do you have any, I don't know, how do you help people to see that? I don't know. Like, if someone's resisting maybe getting in contact with their customers, or they don't really see the value in it, how do you help them to see the value?
Well, there certainly often is resistance at the management level. Are you crazy? We're not paying someone 150K a year so that he hangs out half a day per month in customer care. We pay those people minimum wages or something like that, $12, $15 or so. And I think this is the most valuable time. This is the easiest way to gain the best understanding of what the problem space of your customers is, what they are going through, and more importantly, where they are willing to spend money. I mean, this is all what we do. I try to help people understand that, guys, whenever we run a sprint planning, for example, we make an investment decision. It's not just the direct cost, of supporting a team for 2 weeks, for example. It's also opportunity cost. We could have done something differently during that time frame, So you're now making business decisions here. So please act accordingly. By the way, it also helps if the team exactly knows what they cost, right? So you should be transparent about that. It's in my experience amazing how the decision process is changing the moment people understand. Hey, wait a minute. If we all hang out here, the hour is, let's say, $1,000. You start to feel that people make decisions differently. Now to think about. Is it really a good idea that we spend $2,000 on fixing this edge case here? I mean, should we do that? Isn't there something more valuable that we could do in the same period of time? Again, self-management. Don't tell people what to do when and where and how. Just let them know where they need to be and set up the guardrails. Always stress we're not getting paid to practice Scrum, but solve our customers' problems within the given constraints. And ideally, we contribute to the sustainability of our organization that way. That's it. It's a relatively simple formula.
Yeah, I think that, it's, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit from that book, Turn the Ship Around by David Marquette, where it's like intent-based leadership. If you can get whatever you're thinking about as a decision maker, if you can help other people to see those guardrails or those boundaries, and then they can repeat that back to you when they're making micro decisions, like, I think that's a super powerful thing. Like, to your point, like, hey, this is $2,000. I don't think this is about a 1 in a million chance that somebody hits this edge case. Is it really worth our time here, or could we invest it in a better thing? What about this other thing that we have here? Like, if you have someone on your team telling you that, I mean, they're taking more of an ownership mentality right there, which is something to celebrate, like everybody would love that.
I always have a smile when these kind of discussions start.
Yes.
I think it's interesting that most conversations when we're talking about Scrum leads to, all things Agile, and whatever you're trying to do, whether it's Scrum or some other new thing you're trying to improve an organization, it inevitably, in my mind, leads to systems thinking. And I know a few years back, I was really passionate about, what we need to do is we need to teach systems thinking to kindergartners and then teach it every year as they get older, right? Like a little bit more, so that new workforces of the future, systems thinking is just, you're rewired and it's part of your DNA. So those kids who become managers now in organizations, they know exactly what they have to do. They have to manage the system, like you said, the guardrails, because that's how change happens. It isn't changing hearts and minds. Because again, we always acknowledge this. We know the answer. It's simple to understand. I was looking back to some of the systems thinking texts, right? And obviously Deming comes up, right? Out of the crisis. And I never realized this, but in the preface, I just popped open the beginning of that book. The first sentence of the preface of Out of the Crisis is the following. The aim of this book is transformation of the style of American management, period. And then, of course, it goes on for many paragraphs after that. But I think that's a bold beginning to a book, right? The aim of this book is transformation of the style of American management. And I think that has everything to do with Scrum and many other changes in organizations sort of hitting a wall of anti-patterns potentially, right? And I'm not saying the simple solution is teach it to kindergartners, but I do think there's some opportunity for systems thinking to not be something we're relearning, but something that we all know, and it just makes sense. And it would avoid, I think, a lot of anti-patterns when we're trying to be successful with frameworks like Scrum. Thoughts?
Yeah, there's this adage of you lead people and you manage systems, and it's a very short one, but if you reflect on it, it's really huge. It covers a lot of ground. And I
Yep.
think a lot of the issues that we face in daily work results from that we manage both systems and people. And this how shall leveling up, moving the management of people to leading people is the main challenge that we always face. And
Yep.
I mean, there's no one size fits all solution to it. We just have to figure this out, right? So the book is more kind of it's 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 not a checklist. Yeah, well, if you tick 82 of these boxes, you will be a decent organization or something like that. It doesn't work this way. It's more a kind of a compendium of, okay, think about how this applies to your own organization and what might be the reasons for this. And then think about, okay, what you can do about it. So it's always a critical part. You describe what is happening, provide some background, what is actually supposed to happen in these situations, and then I come up with some ideas. Okay, why we are facing this deviation, and the last part is always okay. So what is the remedy? So what can you do about it? Sometimes it's of course rather not that specific because I don't know what kind of organization this anti-pattern might happen, but I always try to explain to people or make suggestions. Okay, what can you do about it? And even from a position that you do not have a lot of influence or leverage to do something, but you can at least start. I think that the worst thing that can happen is that you shrug shoulders and no, it's always been the way. Why care?
I want to go back to something you said before. So you said leading versus managing people. Maybe you can compare and contrast that for me. What do you mean by that? I think our listeners would find it interesting.
I think managing people is quite common. It's the preferred stance of many people, the management hierarchy. So by figuring out, okay, it's a bit like the aftermath of Taylor and General Motors in the 1920s. The issue that I always have with that is that a system that was working well for churning out more cars in the 1920s is probably not really suited for dealing with complex adaptive problems in the 21st century. I mean, I don't know whether you're Trekkies, but we really go where no one has ever been before most of the time nowadays, right? So we're not assembling fridges on an assembly line any longer. Just a small fraction of the people do that, and even then it's more difficult than it used to be, right? So the old idea of okay, you can have a tin lizzie in every color you want, as long as it's black, okay, yeah, great. But nowadays it's completely different. So I think a lot of maybe part of the educational system, schools are in the most cases still set up to churn out workers for the industrial process. So if you'd like to learn more about that, I can recommend Seth Godin. He has a very deliberate understanding of this. And I fully agree, right? So then it continues on the occasional side in college or university because still classic business administration, a lot of Taylorism and the whole MBA thing. It's again embracing this idea of scientific management, right? And it's very hard to get this out of the mind of people. They're trained that way. They have certain expectations how life will evolve and what their position in life will be and what kind of return on investment they will have. And then you tell them, hey, this self-management thingy, it doesn't mean that you will be obsolete. No, no, don't get me wrong, but you have to entrust the capability to pay your mortgage to a bunch of hoodie-wearing nerds, by the way, right? And of course, a lot of people freak out, when they think about this.
Yeah, if I was to sum it up, like when we think about management, I guess one word I think about is control. So we're not so much trying to control people, but trying to control the system is what I'm hearing there, or set up a system to be successful or to not have this problem. So how do you design that system to not have people that create, technical debt, to not create a product that has features that are very rarely used? Like, how do we do that? And so I think those would be the questions that you would be asking. That'd be very different, right? So I think it's a different approach when I think leaders take the approach of any problem that happened, the system probably was not set up correctly for the people doing the work. And so how can I help that to not, to make a difference there, to change that? What could we do differently? And when you take that approach, I think everyone kind of takes ownership. Everyone starts working through and not blaming people, and we can all of us look at the problem together and try to figure out ways around it. And it is complex, right? Like, I think that's why you said before, like, in this world, we're doing stuff the first time, every time, and man, like, you don't know what's going to happen. And so the only step forward, I guess, is feedback and then responding to that. And I think it's a tough approach if you try to control everything, because you just can't.
No, it doesn't work.
No. So we spent a lot of time, we've had a great conversation about self-organization, about changing a culture of leadership and management. Are there any other like major patterns that stand out to you for the anti-patterns that you talk about in your upcoming book here?
Oh, let me think about this. So self-management is a critical issue. Management stuff, system thinking, yes. If I can choose a third one, it would be technical excellence.
Okay.
So I seriously doubt that there is a path to business agility, which is the ultimate goal of whatever we do here. So learning faster than the competition and being able to turn that into a competitive advantage. So I seriously doubt that there is a path to business agility without technical excellence. So those two are the two sides of the same coin. You have to invest in skills, technical abilities, and the health of your tech stack if you want to be in this game. Absolutely.
It's interesting. I would do some trainings with leaders in the past and have them rank or order the 12 principles in the Agile Manifesto. And technical excellence almost would always be on the bottom. It'd be very near the bottom every single time we did this. And not that like any of them are wrong or like should always be on the bottom, but it was really interesting when you got away from the people doing the work that fell to the bottom all the time, that pattern. And so I think I agree with you, right? Like that is part of the system. And if the technical ability of what the system has only allows you to release every quarter, like you're only going to be able to get so much feedback. Like, sorry, you're not going to be able to operate like a team that can release daily, like you're just not going to learn that fast. And so it's a huge constraint. And even if you had really good technical excellence, you might just like enable something agile-ish that'd be a very adaptable, right? Like I think technical excellence, there's been teams out there that they don't do anything like Scrum or Kanban or any framework. They have great technical excellence, but they're very, very responsive to change and very adaptable because of the way that because of that technology that they're using and how they're using it. And so it's kind of like they're doing it without having the words around it. And I think that's an important thing, right? So if you're missing the technical excellence, definitely something to focus on. But what would be your recommendation? Like if a team doesn't have technical excellence, maybe you come in, you get hired, you got lots of things in your ways, lots of barriers. Like, do you just not do anything agile-ish? Do you go back to waterfall if you don't have technical excellence? If you have very old legacy systems, like what's your path forward?
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't consider that by all means. Even if there's a low level of technical excellence prevailing at the moment, I would say, okay, let's give it a try anyway. Because I believe that the moment you start including everyone in the decision process, if you help them to make their own decisions, it will change the mood within the team.
Sure.
You know, it will change the purpose of the team. You know, people will feel, at least at that level, already some sort of empowerment. You know, some more agency that I had before, and that will, in my experience, always result in better outcomes. And those better outcomes you then can take to the management and see, here, look, we've been doing this already with the current setup. Now imagine where we could be if we just invest a bit more in the critical issues that we're still facing. For example, technical excellence. You know, could be tools, could be education. You know, a lot of things that can help the team to get better at this. So it's not, you can't switch it on. It's more kind of a process. You know, one step is enabling the next step. And if you're good at this, and if you don't lose track of what you're trying to accomplish, it will compound. And I think this is the most important part. But you got to start somewhere, you know, and just saying, oh no, we're not going to doing anything here. Look at the mess here. It's not going to help, you know. Even if you're handicapped and you just say, okay, let's give it a try and see how it works.
That's great. All right, this has been a great podcast. Thanks again for coming on and talking about all the Scrum anti-patterns that you're seeing and maybe some paths forward. I guess at this time, is there anything you want to plug to our listeners? Any way they can connect with you?
Oh, you can Google me actually. So it's the privilege of having a rare last name. And you can find me on LinkedIn. And if you Google Scrum anti-patterns and if you switch to pictures, you will find my little sketches, my cartoons anywhere on the result page, so you can't miss them. These are these little triangle-shaped people with the big round head. You can't miss them, and they will lead you to some sort of blog post or newsletter, and then you're basically in.
Awesome. Great.
Of course, the simple way is to just click on or open the scrum-anti-patterns-.com. I believe the guide is missing. Yeah, but just Google it. You will find it.
If you found value in today's episode, share this with a friend. Until next time, get agile and stay agile.